Hey everybody, this is Alex Merced from alexmerced.com. Your, everyday libertarian dude. And basically what we're going to talk about today is just a lot about the stuff that's kind of going on in the world. There's a lot of cool things going on. Not really. It's been a weird year, even though it's been one of sort of my best years professionally for my job and my career. It's been just one of the sort of most depressing years in general, just being stuck inside all the time. Not eating lots of takeout, if takeout's available. um, Not being able to go to the movies, not being able to go to do a lot of things. It's been not necessarily the most fun year. I've had a few moments out, but not many. But what I want to talk about today is the election. Okay, talk about sort of, we've had two debates so far. We've had the debate with Donald Trump and Biden, and we've had the debate with Pence and Kamala Harris. And one thing is clear, that voting for either of these two major parties is ridiculous. There is a lot on the line in this election, and unfortunately, you lose a lot no matter which one of those two options you pick. Because I mean, at the end of the day, no matter what you feel about policy-wise, what's occurred with Donald Trump over the last 4 years, at the end of the day, Donald Trump as a leader, and this is the character matters. Character does matter because, especially when you're in a leadership position, the way you behave has sort of is like a conduit. It kind of becomes the way the other people in the organization behave, because you're setting a tone for how to behave. So we've noticed that this whole country has become chaotic, it's become evasive, it's become angry, and it's not because, I want to say, a lot of people just say, "Oh, Donald Trump's just like this racist guy." No, I think people try to really attack him harder than is necessarily warranted as far as his personal character. Not that his character is all that great. Okay, he's definitely someone who's willing to lie, willing to say whatever he needs to say to have people think that he is correct. He is not at all humble and takes credit for a lot of other people's work, and probably earnestly thinks that it's his accomplishment, and constantly feels like he should get his way, and is constantly throwing temper tantrums and has very little discipline. But in that character in itself, that is a problem that has again affected not just how the government runs. Not that I care that much about how the government runs, considering I'm a libertarian who generally feels that government solutions, even in the best case scenarios, tend to always go over budget, tend to move too slow, be not adaptable, and get corrupted pretty quickly. So in that case, it's just what I expect from government on steroids. But it also affects just the way people are individually behaving with each other, and that's the part that really bothers me. That Trump's example to the country, being such a public figure, probably being one of the most visible presidents ever. A lot of people oftentimes don't know who the president is, or don't know who the vice president is, but these last 4 years, people know who the president is. Probably more so than at any other moment in history. And people have been watching more carefully than ever. And again, the way that behavior is definitely sort of sprinkled throughout and made the culture, not the country, just in the country, but around the world, a lot more just divisive and bitter. Not that it wasn't before, but it's contributed. There's no lie about it. And another 4 years of Trump would just make it worse, because there's no sign that he's going to change his behavior anytime soon. I don't begrudge the person, Donald Trump, for being himself and wanting to live his life and do whatever he wants to do. But in that particular role, there's a lot of damage to be done with having a poor character. Biden, while at least visually and optically may seem like someone of a better character in the sense, he doesn't come across as a jerk, doesn't come across as egotistical, or doesn't come across as a child. Which again, that's not that isn't of no value. His policy record on the things that really, really matter right now, particularly criminal justice, him and Kamala Harris have been horrible on. Okay, whether it's all the level of criminal justice of prosecution that Kamala Harris did, of things that shouldn't be crimes, of shady practices during her time as a prosecutor, whether it's the 1994 crime bill under Biden. In a moment when criminal justice is so at the forefront of the conversation, it's unfortunate to say that Donald Trump and Mike Pence actually do have a better record on criminal justice with the First Step Act. That's just the unfortunate reality. They both have very poor records. Biden and Kamala have great, better rhetoric when it comes to criminal justice. They say better things, but their actions speak volumes. And while Donald Trump and Pence have said worse things, and I think have dismissed the reality of today a little too. Again, it's the reality is always in the middle. Okay, it's not one extreme. It's not like we have this like, state of rabid racism. It's not Lovecraft Country, which is an amazing show. So if you haven't watched Lovecraft Country, it's a great show. But I mean, the current state of the world isn't that. But it isn't not that either. It isn't like there is no racism and there is no systemic issues at all. Okay, there's always cultural issues. The problem is cultural issues can't just be fixed by a law or by throwing money at it. It's something we just have to work on ourselves through communicating with each other and trying to have better communication with each other and be willing to have conversations to move culture in a better direction so we can coexist better. There's no magical policy solution to that. You can force people to do certain things, but it doesn't change the way they think, the way they feel, and doesn't change what future generations will get transmuted to them. That's a choice of us, and that's always kind of moving in a better direction, because we always grow up and we see things we like and we don't like from our parents, and then we share what we like and we don't share what we don't like. So the next generation's always kind of culturally a slight improvement, and but it takes time. Is the point that I'm trying to say, to make those grander cultural changes. So bottom line is like, and then on top of it, it's very clear that the Democrats are toying with the idea of, very dangerous precedences, whether it's getting rid of the filibuster and court packing. And these aren't things that are just, oh, okay, well, we just need to, fight back against Republicans. They are things that that once done set a precedence that will basically make politics even more divisive, because what's at stake will be that much greater. Because of whatever party wins can just always add more seats to the Supreme Court. Once that precedence has been established, then every time a party switches, they'll just add as many seats. And eventually, in a decade or so, you'll have like a Supreme Court that has like 100 people, because every party just keeps adding people to the court to have their dominance. Okay, the Supreme Court will become much more volatile, and it's sort of the one stable institution. And honestly, I don't think it's a bad thing that it'll have a conservative majority, because honestly, you read the tea leaves, you're gonna have probably a advantage to the Democrats electorally for a good amount of time, probably through the majority of the next decade. So in the legislature and in the executive office, more than likely. So having sort of a branch of government that still kind of acts as sort of like a conservative constraint is not necessarily a bad thing. Okay, having some sort of check to make sure that the generally more domestically interventionist side. At the end of the day, they're both interventionists. Just how they want to intervene and whether they want to intervene is what changes. But in a sense that we're not going to spend ourselves to oblivion, which we already are doing, but at a quicker pace, might be not a bad thing to have a conservative Supreme Court to kind of balance that out. Now again, there are downsides to a conservative Supreme Court for sure, as there's downsides to a very left-wing Supreme Court. Ideally, everyone would just appoint centrists to the Supreme Court. But that's just not the nature of today's political culture, where it's very much, and politics is always winner gets the spoils, which is just the problem with politics in general, and which is why you don't want so much of society being determined through electoral politics. Because to succeed in electoral politics, no matter how much money reform you do, campaign dollars, it still requires resources and people with resources to back you. And those people are always only going to back people who are to their advantage. Okay, so you can limit large dollar donations. It doesn't necessarily mean there's not other ways they can contribute. You can make it more transparent. It doesn't mean the corruption won't be there, because the benefit will be there. It's just not And then, in a country, being a country as powerful as the U.S., out of every government in the world, there is the most to gain from corrupting our particular government. So it's generally, you just don't want that government to be that powerful, because it's the level of corruption. Like, the people point out other governments who are maybe less corrupt and whatnot, but a lot of them have a lot less influence in the world, a lot less power. Basically, what you can get out of corrupting them is a lot less. So yes, the degrees of corruption, even though they still have corruption, they still have all sorts of issues. But again, there are issues of degree. Not all governments are necessarily equal in their impact. Thus, their incentive for corruption. Okay. Now, so in that case, what should we do? We should vote Joe Jorgensen. I mean, Joe Jorgensen, far as the campaign goes, has done a phenomenal job of doing what I've seen very few third-party campaigns ever do, as far as being able to just reach people, be visible, capture people's curiosity. I mean, Joe Jorgensen isn't the person with the highest name recognition in the world, but she's, you know, a good person, and people who've been exposed to her campaign like what they see. Same thing with Spike Cohen. Anyone who's been exposed to Spike Cohen generally like what they see. He's a nice guy. He's passionate. You can. It's hard to not feel like he is a reasonable person, and that goes for both of them. Okay, so Joe and Spike are a great ticket. Okay, they are not these long-time politicians, and people are, I know, concerned about experience, but they aren't necessarily these braggadocio. They're not braggadocio, celebrity reality show businessmen like Trump either. They're just people who have had their successes, some in business, they've had their successes in life, they've had their joys in family. They're people with real experiences that real people have. Okay, they're not detached from the everyday human experience. Okay, as your traditional long-time politician is, and as your, Donald Trump, who just has his own sort of Donald Trump world. So even if you're not a die-in-the-world libertarian like I am, they'd still be a ticket for you. And I think there's every reason in the world to be excited about this ticket. And there's a reason why it is sort of like a sleeper candidacy, in the sense that, you don't hear about the ticket as much as you maybe heard about Gary Johnson in 2016. But amazing things are actually happening when you take a look at, the attendance at events, and a lot of the organization on the ground, and just sort of the unity I've seen among the libertarians and basically those who are disenfranchised by the two legacy parties around that campaign. So that's really exciting to see. So that is pretty cool. And then there's also, again, the whole COVID-19 situation, which isn't much to say about that. Like, this is the new normal. This is, we can kick and scream about it. What we do want to push against the government sort of like being in the way. Okay, people have found ways to kind of adjust, but at the end of the day, like, this disease exists. People are already scared. The culture has already changed to where we're going to be sort of more isolated, more socially distanced for the foreseeable future. There's no off switch. We're just going to go back and act like this never happened. But we can try to get back to people, at least get back to a place where maybe people may still behave with a level of caution, but we can try to get people to get away from the state of fear, the state of despair, and start speaking a message where people can start enjoying life again, and start trying to find new ways to enjoy life, and maybe even start re-exploring and reintroducing some of the old ways, even if they do need some minor adjustments while things are still being figured out. But at the end of the day, again, there is a huge cost to painting this picture of despair. And I mean, I understand the politics of it. Again, the worse you make everything seem to be, the worse it is for the incumbent. So the Democrats have every reason to have everyone being, scared and angry and whatnot right now. It makes it really easy to kind of beat the incumbent. But at the same time, and then some people are really experiencing real despair, real suffering. There's sadness when they lose a loved one, but there's also people who lose their jobs because of lockdowns. They have no way to search for an income because of lockdowns, and they commit suicide. They turn to drugs. Families get ruined, businesses get ruined. There's a cost benefit, and that's what we don't hear the conversation kind of focusing around. That it's not because we're just trying to protect the economy for financial sake, but the economy and its financial productivity is something that people survive on. That allows families to stay together, to be close. And there is a trade-off when you sit there and you sacrifice that too much. But it doesn't necessarily mean you shouldn't care about health and taking precautions and doing what you can to weather this crisis as best as possible. And that's always the thing about politics. They always just kind of focus on one issue and they ignore the trade-offs with all other issues, because it's a great way to kind of steer the forces of people out there. And that's really all they want to do, is they just want to channel your energy to that ballot box, so that way they can just enjoy doling out favors to those who got them where they were, and not do the things that you voted for them to do in the first place. That's just the way it works. Again, why I prefer a culture where we focus on us solving our solutions, where we are the answers, where we work together. We don't wait for someone's permission. We don't wait for someone's election to fix things. We just fix things. It's why I love being a software developer now. It's why I love being a teacher, because you enable people to fix their own problems. You create tools that can help people fix their problems. You empower people as a teacher. You empower people as a software developer. That's also why I'm a libertarian, because when you teach people to think about how they can solve the problems, you are empowering people. Everything I do, everything I think, everything I believe is about allowing people to do more, because people can do more. People have that potential. And that's why I'm voting Joe Jorgensen, because it's the only campaign that speaks to that cares about that. So, my name is Alex Merced. I'm a libertarian. You can see me at alexmerced.com and listen to my previous episodes of my podcast where I talk about all sorts of different issues and whatnot. You can find my videos on YouTube where you can find me talking about any issue you can imagine. And you guys have a great day and enjoy.